It's now time for this month's broadcast of Learning Now TV.
Welcome to the first Learning Now TV of 2026. Nigel, hope you had a lovely time over the holidays. What have we got on the show today?
I did, Kate. Thank you very much. And welcome to another year of Learning Now TV. I'm very, very pleased to be here. And it's great to be with you, Kate.
Same.
Well, it's a good show to kick off the year, starting with a really interesting AI use interview with Egle Vinosceta. Egle is an expert and she shares some of the data and some of her ideas. Really interesting. Then Gary Cookson talks to Lisa Minogue-White about his new book, which is called The Squeezed Middle. Why middle managers are vital and yet often overlooked, first to go when there's any problems, never given really much encouragement and not treated very well largely. And then Laurie Niels-Hoffman talks to Kate about her top predictions for workplace learning in 2026. And I talk to Martin and share insights on a major new report, the 2026 Iventiv Pulse report, which looks at 350 odd learning leaders in the US and Europe. What's obsessing them? What are their priorities? And what difference has AI made? And then finally, if that isn't enough, Rob Clark comes bouncing along with his talk about mergers, acquisitions, and all the news, views, and scandal around workplace learning. It's going to be great. Enjoy the show. It's my absolute pleasure to welcome Egle Vinosceta back to Learning Now TV for not the first, second, but the third time. So the privilege is all mine, the opportunity to talk to you today. So thank you so much for coming into the studio.
Thanks for having me back, Nigel.
It's a real pleasure. Now, Egle is the founder and director of a company called Nodes. Note it, Nodes spelt N-O-D-E-S, and it is an AI and L&D consultancy. And she's been really busy in the last 6 months, as you can probably guess. She's a really influential thinker, and she's got a real deep worldwide knowledge of AI transformation, particularly in L&D. And she works with Donald Taylor, and with Don, she's produced a number of reports on the penetration of AI into L&D and some of the issues, tensions, and some of the case studies, some of the success stories built around that. So she's a real future of work, future of organizations, future of AI kind of person. And en passant, I should mention that she's got a Harvard MEd, which is a really impressive qualification. I've been to the Ed School at Harvard, and it's full of really great, smart, and terrific people. So let's get on with the questions. So the first one is a very simple question for this time of year. What, Egle, do you think were the biggest differences between the beginning and end of 2025 in terms of both attitude to and implementation of AI?
Well, I would say that there were at least two things happening. One is this incremental increase in AI use, where at some point during the year, we passed the what we call the implementation inflection point, where a majority of people in L&D reported actively using and not just experimenting with AI. So naturally, as more organizations are rolling out AI tools to more people, there are more examples to get inspired by and build on across the industry, and therefore the use keeps increasing. But another thing that was going on was the payoff for the investments made a few years prior. So I think it's actually a more meaningful timeline to consider because I find it helpful to think of AI use as tactical or strategic. So tactical use, such as AI for many learning design tasks, can take only days to roll out once you get the go-ahead, essentially. Bigger workflow or program improvements can take a few weeks to a few months. And when we're talking about strategic use often changes what L&D does, not just how it does it. And that's a much larger undertaking, as you can imagine. And in 2025, some teams saw the fruits of the labor that they started back in 2024 or even 2023.
Yeah, that's a really important point. This doesn't all happen overnight. And there's a tendency, if you read the popular press, to imagine that it is literally magic. You wave your wand. So I'm not asking you to be a predictor, because I don't think that's what you are happy doing. But what are the faint signals at the end of 2025 that you think are going to really manifest themselves in 2026? What are the underlying things that are going to come out and hit us between the eyes, do you think?
Well, you are kind of asking me to be a predictor, Nigel. So I would say that there are things that I would like to see and the things that we'll actually see. And I think it's important to see L&D as an industry as not a monolith, because different teams move at different speeds, which is a function of where the wider business is at with AI, their culture and mandate, the vision of the L&D leadership, and the trust ultimately that the wider business has in them and in the L&D team. So it's very difficult to say what's going to happen more or what's going to happen less, because we have different groups here. What applies to one group,
That's true.
Yeah, what applies to one group in their context does not apply to another. So speaking of signals and some of the developments that may or may not happen, are we going to see more strategic thinking and sophisticated use of AI? Yes, because there's more shared knowledge and shared thinking in the industry now, and it's easier to make a business case for investment when you have some good examples and the business itself is more open to this technology than it was a year and definitely a few years ago. So that's a yes. Are we going to see L&D collaborating more with other parts of the business because they see that learning and performance support are increasingly happening outside their domain? Yes, because some organizations have already reached that point, but also no, because many others are nowhere near it. And are we going to see things like new and powerful learning design workflows that help teams be more responsive to business needs, help teams produce higher quality outputs? Yes, absolutely. But there will still be plenty of people using AI to create mediocre content. So again, I can go on and on. Are we going to see more gratuitous AI use where it's added for the sake of it, or where AI makes some people feel that they can now do the job of experts because they can now produce the surface output without understanding what should happen under it? Also, yes. So someone's no is another one's yes.
Yeah, but I get that, and I think that's wise counsel and wise advice. There's no miracles, just hard work pays off in some instances and it looks rather less satisfying in other instances. So what do you hope? What is the most interesting aspect of AI implementation that you're engaged with, that you really kind of grabs you and goes, yes, this is the direction. This makes me happy.
Well, these are three different questions. I'm gonna talk about probably the most interesting aspect of AI that may not be visible to the people who are not maybe using AI that often comparatively. And I think it's this. It's the fact that the biggest AI unlocks are in processes and not in the AI itself. So in answering the question, which processes are worth AI-fying, where AI sits in the process, what role the human performs to get a good final output. Because if AI creates an additional QA workflow, so essentially just transfers the same work from creating to reviewing, that's not very helpful. And if AI is used by someone who doesn't understand what problem they're solving or what good looks like, most of the AI power is wasted. So this is the lesson that many frequent AI users have already learned, and many more will as they keep using AI. It's not about what tool you use or what there's some of it is about what tool you use, but it's not just, oh, this is a cool thing that AI can do. It's about where you use it in a context, what problem you're solving, how you're doing it.
Yes, I think that's absolutely true. And it's more holistic, isn't it? It's not about, I'll plug this bit of AI in there. It's how do I look at the whole purpose that we're engaged in, and how can AI inform that entire purpose? So it's about plugging into a holistic picture, not just messing around on the periphery, because that's uninteresting. So give me one hope and one fear for 2026 then. What is your hope? What do you hope more people get that? That would be a good hope for me. But what is your one big hope?
Well, Nigel, you want to end on a fear, huh? Just ending on a low. Okay, let's start with the hope. My hope is that L&D starts exploring AI use beyond content and beyond even skills practice. These are not bad uses, but there are more powerful things, more impactful and more embedded things, like embedded in the way work is done, that L&D can explore. So, for example, that L&D might consider how it might use AI capabilities to capture tacit usable knowledge in the organization, to offer contextual support or surface real-time signals about skills, about employee needs, things like that.
Yeah, and the fear is that none of that happens and there's more content, basically.
Oh,
is that fair?
I mean, that would have been cheating. I could have thought of that's the fears of my hope doesn't happen, huh? No, the fear for me is that L&D is giving itself too much runway to figure AI out. Access to knowledge and employee expectations have already changed. In many organizations, the way work is done is changing. And with that, the value proposition of L&D has to change as well. And I've said it before many times, the value of content has plummeted, and so will the value of L&D if it ties itself to content. And yet I see still a lot of conversations about tactical tweaks with AI without addressing the elephant in the room.
Yeah, because what I find is that organizations are really worried. They're engaged, they're excited, but they're going to do things now. And an L&D that says, give us 6 months to work this out, or we'll just keep doing content for a while and something else might emerge. It's just not good enough, is it? It's not fit for purpose, and it's not engaging with the core, really essence of what is driving organizations at the moment.
Yeah, definitely. And you probably noticed it yourself that there are different, buckets of L&D teams and L&D leaders, like in the way they think about it, and the way that, okay, so this is cool. We're gonna increase efficiency and create more stuff and be more responsive. These are all good things. But then you have another breed of leaders who say that, we are already doing that, and what we're realizing that yes, AI can help us do that, but in comparison to what else it can do, in terms of how it changes the way we are perceived in the organization, the kind of work that we do, who we collaborate with in the organization, and the impact we are likely to have, all of those content efficiencies, they are in comparison not that big a deal.
No, I completely agree, and very uninteresting to the wider business community. So if I could sum up everything we've said in the last 14 minutes in 2 words, are those 2 words get moving? Is that fair?
Yes. Let's do that. Especially it's January, new year, new me. Let's do it.
Okay. It's always a pleasure to talk to you. So I'm already excited about talking to you for the 4th time on LNTV, which will be soon, I hope. So thank you so much for giving us your time, and have a great year ahead. Welcome to 2026.
Thanks, Nigel.
So I've snagged Laurie Niles Hoffman, founder of 8 Levers, to give us her key prediction in learning in the workplace for 2026.
All right. Well, I do not have a crystal ball, but what I really think will happen, and we're already seeing hints of it, is that we won't actually have a bespoke agent that that employees engage with. It'll actually just roll up probably into a Copilot or Gemini, wherever, depending on what people are using, and it'll be seamless. Just like if you're using, for example, OpenAI right now, ChatGPT, it selects the model depending on what type of question you ask. I think we're going to be moving into a very similar model. If we think of Copilot, you won't have to say, I need the learning, or go to a separate agent. You'll be talking to Copilot. It'll recognize that this is a learning request, and then it just defaults into learning mode. So that essentially is going to be where learning sits, and it's going to have memory that it will know what the business KPIs are, what skills are in shortage. So it's going to nudge you and guide you in those directions, but it's also going to be built on solid pedagogy so that it will do things like paced learning, repetition, asking the right questions, leveraging content as and when in the flow of work. That's my prediction. We'll see where it goes.
And that's why the data bit is so important, right? That's
Right.
one of your 8 levers is
Correct.
if you haven't got things sort of correctly tagged, clean, in the right place, none of that stuff is gonna the scaffolding needs to be there, right?
Correct. It's Giga, garbage in, garbage out, right? If you don't have that clean, neat, and tidy, that's not going to work at all. So time to bring out the Hoover and clean up your data. Throw it in the washing machine.
Spring cleaning for the end of year. Love it.
Yes. Thank you.
Thanks, Laurie.
Gary Cookson is talking to Lisa Minogue White about his new book, which is called The Squeeze Middle. So he's talking about the really vital role that middle managers play. They hold culture together, they transfer strategy into action. They're the only people really to translate strategy into action. And yet that impact is often seen as invisible and underestimated. Sorry, it's not underestimated, it's underestimated. And what that means is that they get treated probably not as well as they should be for the contribution that they make. It's a really interesting book. And I don't know anyone else who's written a book that just focuses on the impact of middle managers.
So important. And as I say, as somebody who's been one, I'm really can't wait to read this and hear more from Gary.
Well, I am delighted to introduce a familiar face to many of you at Learning Now TV. Gary is not only a prolific and very popular author in the learning and HR space, he's also director at Epic. But most importantly today, Gary has taken on the monumental task, I think, of tackling a subject that is very meta and very zeitgeist at the moment, looking at the role of the middle manager. We're going to dive into that a little bit more in a moment, but Gary, a huge welcome to you to Learning Now TV.
Thank you, Lisa. It's lovely to be back. Hello, everybody.
Wonderful. Well, exactly. And, I think there's probably going to be a mini series of, if you want to go onto our website, of clips of Gary, because I don't think this man is going to stop writing books. And on the basis of his latest book, On the Squeezed Middle, I think there are so many directions in which you could take here, Gary. We could spend a literal age talking about this. I'm really interested, though, and particularly because I think it is such a relevant topic at the moment, seeing all the changes in many household names that we've seen in terms of reorgs, the focus on what roles are important in the age of AI. There's so much we could talk about. So, Gary, what inspired you to write The Squeeze Middle, and why now?
Okay, there's a number of ways of answering that. I can answer that from a personal perspective. I can answer that from a professional perspective. And one led to the other, so I'll try and do both. Personally, when I finished my second book, there's a bit of momentum behind writing a book, and it's easier sometimes to keep going than it is to stop. I equate it to running downhill. Sometimes it's just easier just to keep going and see where it leads you. So there was an element of that. And when you say in your intro that I might not stop writing books, I think there's probably something to that as well, although I think my wife would have something to say about that. But that's the personal stuff. Professionally, I was searching for a different topic. There's my first 2 books on the nature of hybrid working and the modern world of work. And I was searching for something different because there was a danger that I'd become a little bit stereotyped, pigeonholed. I'd be the hybrid guy, and I didn't want to be the hybrid guy forever because that boat has probably sailed now. And I was looking for something different. And a publisher approached me and said they were starting a series on what management is in the modern world of work and would I like to contribute? And I said, yeah, of course I would. And I thought of doing this on the role of middle managers, because middle managers, if you look at most of the literature around leadership and management, it skips over the middle entirely. It's all about strategy at the top, which is got a place and we have to have that, or it's about the execution below, and that's got a place too. And I wanted to center on the overlooked space, the bit in the middle. Lots of middle managers, many middle managers, doing a lot of extraordinary, often invisible work, and yet they rarely get the credit, rarely get the support, rarely get the development, the preparation for that type of role. And they're at the center of everything going on in most organizations, from contradictions to something that is really helpful and insightful. And you mentioned some things in the media as well. We may well get on to some of those too. It's a role that's in the spotlight, but nobody really knows why. When it fails, they are the target for a lot of often unfair and sometimes justified criticism, but nobody really goes out to bat for them. So I wanted to do some of that.
Yeah, and I think something that we're going to come on to in this conversation is some of the inherent vulnerabilities, I think, in being a middle manager. Like you said, you're kind of that orchestrator of so many different moving parts in an organization, but sometimes it's really difficult to pin down what that is and how you measure it. So yeah, I'm fascinated to dive into that a little bit more. But I know that with all of your books, you're meticulous in the research of them. And what surprised you most when you were researching this about the reality of being a middle manager today?
I think the invisibility or the intangibility of the role itself, and I've been a middle manager, as many people watching this will have been as well, and that might well not surprise some of you, I guess, but how much of that job is invisible. They are sense makers. They are people who provide calm, who dispel anxiety in organizations. They are people who prevent conflict before it erupts. But they're accountable for an awful lot without necessarily feeling empowered to make the right decision. So they have a lot of responsibility, but a low level of control. And they have a huge impact on culture in organizations. But the work that they do to create and maintain culture, that's not visible, that's not tangible. And therefore they are that target for sweeping cuts in organizations. When organizations need to save money, the middle seems to be the obvious place to start, which seems quite misguided. And the one way to demonstrate the value of middle management, and this came out in my research, is to get rid of them. I'd see what doesn't get done or see what happens next. You soon realize the value of middle managers when you don't have them anymore.
Well, I hope you don't mind me asking a controversial question. This is going slightly left field, but I love what you said there about the fact that they are, to a significant degree, kind of custodians of culture, because it's kind of where culture comes to live. And it's interesting you saying there about, well, what you could do is remove them from the picture and see what's broken. Do you think that though middle managers really are attributed to being the drivers of culture, or is that something that ends up kind of becoming, again, part of a department, part of employee engagement or workplace experience or HR, whatever? Do you think it's attributed properly to middle managers?
No, I don't think it is really. It is often seen as being the remit of the people team or the organizational development team. For good reason as well, because they need to have that overview of what's going on and they have a lot of the skills needed. But the people who turn that kind of stuff into reality are the middle managers in organizations, are the people who've got the network of control, the vast range of influence, and the impact on so many different decisions that culture is what they live and breathe, whether they realize it or not, whether other people in the
Yeah.
organization realize it or not, that is what they do.
I think you're absolutely right. And we've touched on there on some of the ways in which middle managers are misunderstood, undervalued, dispensable. I think as well as, and you articulated that really well in terms of they kind of live in this mysterious middle that's very difficult to kind of quantify. Are there any specific things that you think lead to that misunderstanding?
It's because the role is not really very well defined in many places. It's very clear what it is to be a director, an executive in the C-suite. Very clear what that means for many organizations. And you are senior enough at that level to get celebrated and get supported in certain ways. It's also quite clear and well defined in most organizations what a first line manager does. They manage the people on the front line. They get some support doing that. It's a very easy, identifiable role. But the bits in between those two things, well, what's that all about? It's not seen as a destination for many people. It's not seen as something that has its own distinct set of responsibilities different from other levels. And therefore, it's really misunderstood. It's not valued in the way that we might want it to be because the role profile isn't there. And that's something that some of the good organizations I've been talking to as part of my research, they've invested in really defining the role and highlighting to people that it can be a destination on a career, not a milestone on your career, but a job and a valuable one in and of itself. Not functional, but cross-functional. And that's where the value needs to come through.
Oh, I completely agree. I think that, ability to work cross-functionally
Yeah.
and now more than ever, the ability to work with that ambiguity. Like you say, it's probably that one thing that you don't know what it's got till it's gone.
Yeah.
And you wrench that from the organization. And I love in the book, you describe the middle management as both squeezed and magnificent. And I wanted to understand from you what you think those two sides look like in practice.
Yeah, well, the title of the book is, of course, The Squeezed Middle. And that was how, when I started writing it, I saw the role of a middle manager. They've got pressure coming from above. They've got expectation coming from below. They're managing the tension, the anxiety, the inherent conflict that comes with being in the middle. And they haven't necessarily got the clarity of what their authority looks like to deal with all of that. So that's where the squeezed bit comes from. But during my research, somebody else shared with me the fact that they call middle managers the magnificent middle. And by that point, it was too late for me to change the title of the book. But I wish that I'd come up with that title. Somebody else did, though. But these are the people who translate strategy into reality. These are the people who hold culture. These are the people who see things going wrong and catch it before it does too much damage. These are the people who influence without authority, but in a way that really works in organizations. They've got a massive network in the way that first-line managers haven't, senior leaders haven't, middle managers have the ability to touch everybody in an organization because of that cross-functional role that we hinted at earlier on. And the magic is often in the small shifts, the little rituals, the little decisions, the way they network around the organization. That's where the magnificence comes through. These are things that are not seen, but are very much appreciated in organizations. And again, stop doing them. You'll soon see what the impact is.
And I think something that you touched on there in terms of there's definition of the role, but the magnificence of the middle maybe isn't articulated or people aren't aware of the smarter skills that you talk about: emotional intelligence, adaptability, reflection. And how can we move away from those view that I guess that they are typically softer skills, and why those skills are so crucial in middle management and then for the organization as a whole?
Well, I think relabeling them is a start. Many people watching this will know what we mean when we say soft skills. It's a fairly well known term, but it's an unfair one. And there's an insinuation that soft isn't quite as good as anything a bit harder and so on. So I use the label SMART skills. I call them core operating skills as well. The things that actually make work happen under the vast amounts of uncertainty that many organizations and certainly most middle managers operate in. And I think it's to do with how, not just how we label them, but how we measure the results, the effectiveness of what middle management is. It isn't always about productivity, performance. It's about things like team cohesion. It's about things like how quickly they can adapt to changing circumstances. It's about how clear their communication is. It's about the engagement they get from their teams and direct reports. There's other ways of looking at the value that middle managers create, and those things need those core operating or SMART skills. And I think the more effort we can put into that, then the better everybody is positioned to take advantage of the changing world of work.
I think this is where the book is so important. And actually, for as well as thinking about these are the skills a middle manager needs, it kind of brought me to mind that it's almost as a middle manager that you need to be able to articulate the value that you bring, because a lot of the things that you described there, things like team cohesion, you can't really measure those in a 3-month period, but you'll know, just like you said, when you remove that, you'll know when it's gone.
Yeah.
So there are some leading indicators, things that will be happening in the business that will help you show you're on the right path. But the value that you bring, we had Andy Lancaster on here talking about communities, and that's sort of my background, is those are just leading indicators. It's the long tail of the effect it has on the organization, I think, is really important. So there's probably something about what middle managers need to do in terms of articulating the value that they bring. But how can organizations better kind of identify and prepare future middle managers for this reality that you paint, which I think you paint very succinctly? How do we prepare them to be successful in that role?
Well, you mentioned identify and prepare, and I would see those as two different but linked things. Identifying people is a natural follow-on from defining the role and working out what a middle manager is and the way they operate. You should then be able to spot people already doing it well, no matter where they are in the organization. They might already be a middle manager, they might be further down the organization. The ones doing informal leadership, influencing without authority, who are trusted to solve problems, who know people, who know stuff. And my mum always used to tell me that to get ahead in work or in life, it's not about what you know, but it's about who you know. And I think that holds true for the role of a middle manager. And you'll know these people already. So identifying them is perhaps the easy bit, because once you know what you're looking for, you'll see it. But preparing them, that's an interesting one, because the organizations that do prepare middle managers do seem to do better when those people reach that level in an organization, and better in a range of different indicators as well. And you mentioned Andy's work on communities of practice, communities of learning. That's a critical thing for middle managers, critical thing for most professionals, but for middle managers in particular, it's something that very rarely happens, but when it does, that's where the magic takes place.
And Gary, as well as reading other people's books, like I said, there's plenty in your back catalogue that they can dig into. So as well as that, where else can people find you?
Well, the main social media platform that I use nowadays is LinkedIn, and I'm not hard to track down on there. I'm Gary Cookson. You can't find me on other ones, but most of my content is on LinkedIn. My website is epichr.co.uk, and you can find my books on Amazon, Kogan Page, Waterstones, and all good booksellers.
Fantastic. Or order from your local bookseller, who'll definitely be able to get hold of it, and probably has a lovely little coffee shop that you can read Gary's wonderful works in. So, Gary, it's been an absolute pleasure speaking to you today. I am sure this will not be the last time that we speak to you on Learning Now TV. Can't wait to read the next one after this. I know this one's hot off the press, but you'll be busy with your next endeavour. So thank you so much for joining us today, Gary.
Thank you.
It wouldn't be Learning Now TV without Rob Clark's monthly updates from Learning News. So what's happened? As Nigel said, is there any scandal? Is there any gossip? Let's find out.
Coursera and Udemy have announced a $2.5 billion merger. we look beyond the headlines at the strategy behind the deal. The World of Learning Summit is in early February. Some of those presenting join us to explain what's in store. Learning Pool is on the acquisition trail and has snapped up the mid-market LMS WorkRamp and the authoring app Elucidat. Learning Pool CEO joins us on the programme. Coursera and Udemy have agreed a $2.5 billion all-stock merger, one of the biggest deals yet in digital learning. The story here is what the combined organisation is being built to do. Since the agreement was announced in December, Coursera has made it clear this is not a content grab, but a move to consolidate platforms and capabilities. Data and AI sit at the centre of this, where the cost of building genuinely AI-driven learning products is rising quickly, making scale very important. Together, the two businesses generate around $1.5 billion annual revenue and are targeting $115 million in cost savings. The logic here is to share infrastructure, product investment, and data capability at a level that would be hard to sustain independently. For enterprise buyers, the promise is a broader, more integrated platform combining university-backed credentials with short-form skills content and AI-driven skills discovery, tracking, and verification. Coursera is positioning the combined business as a system of record for workforce skills, rather than just another content library. What remains unclear is execution. Pricing, packaging, and how two very different ecosystems are brought together are still open questions, and the platforms will operate separately until the deal concludes, likely in the second half of 2026. For L&D leaders, the takeaway is this: the merger signals where the market is heading: fewer, larger platforms aiming to own the full skills lifecycle, with buyers needing to rethink carefully about dependency, choice, and long-term value. Under pressure to move faster, prove value, and respond to change, workplace learning is at a crossroads. Expectations of L&D are rising and familiar approaches are being tested. These aren't new challenges, but entering 2026, there's a growing sense that something has shifted. The pace feels different, the questions sharper, and the consequences of standing still feel a little more exposed. One place where all of this is debated is the World of Learning Summit coming up in early February in London.
We're really excited about this year's World of Learning Summit. Visitors can expect a highly engaging and interactive experience. Attendees will hear from expert speakers and peers who are tackling some real challenges. There's a strong emphasis, as always, on actionable insights and collaboration. Above all, I would say the summit is about connection, connecting your ideas to impact, strategy to practice, and of course, connecting people. There is an extensive free-to-attend seminar program and roundtable program, and really good opportunities to network and collaborate. Highlights for me would be the main stage sessions. Definitely check out those speakers and those topics, and the sip and learn sessions, which are informal group discussions where you can grab a drink, ask some questions, and dive deeper into specific topics.
Learning Pool has made two significant acquisitions in the past few months, adding WorkRamp in the US and Elucidat in the UK to its portfolio. Joining me in the studio is Learning Pool's CEO, Benoit de la Tour, to discuss the timing of these deals and how the company plans to compete in a market that's changing faster than ever.
Challenging economic times are a good time and a good opportunity to make a few bold moves. The learning market is highly fragmented, with 3,000 companies in learning tech and about 500 learning platforms. And these are way too many. And I think in the future, we're going to see champions or category leaders emerge, and we want to be both. So for us, WorkRamp and Elucidat, we're very aligned with our long-term vision. WorkRamp because they bring an AI-first next-generation LMS that is purposely built for the SMB and the mid-market. We believe we can now serve both the enterprise market and we can serve now the SMB needs much better. For Elucidat, with the launch of Create, they have now an AI-first authoring solution that literally can help everyone build enterprise-grade training courses in no time. So together, Elucidat and Learning Pool, we can accelerate our ability to deliver value across every stage of the learning cycle. And that was the purpose for those acquisitions.
That's Learning News for January. I hope you enjoyed the programme. Thank you to our programme sponsor, CLO 100. And I can announce that Learning News, me and the team, will be filming at CLO 100's Learning Leaders Forum in June this year. At that point, we'll be halfway through what I think will be a pivotal year in this industry. And I encourage all of those in or aspiring to be in learning leadership roles to take part in this event. It's completely unique, just for L&D leadership, and we'll have a lot to cover. And a big thank you to all of those companies who added their news to Learning News this month. We featured it all while you've been watching this. And there's more on every news story on the website. That's all from me. See you next time.
It's about time we had another research report, methinks. So I've twisted Martin Cousins' arm and we've come up with a really useful and interesting report to discuss. So Martin, welcome back and tell us about the report and what made you choose it in the first place.
Well, thanks, Nigel. And it's great to be here as ever. So we have a report called the 2026 iVentiv Pulse, and it's basically a report. iVentiv, they kind of convene events for senior learning leaders around the world. So, and as a part of the process, they survey those leaders and they ask them around questions, and they've been doing so for the last 3 or 4 years. So this 26 version of the report follows on from, I think the first one was in 2023. So what you've got is this kind of snapshot of what senior heads of learning in large organizations are thinking about and what their priorities are. So I think it's quite just a useful piece of research to reflect on, really, to see is it a kind of state of the nation for the industry as a whole or not. I think when you get into what the priority areas are, one might think it is, because if I just very quickly in my sort of intro, there are some priority areas, the 10 big ones, and leadership and executive development is number one. A big surge up the list from previous years is artificial intelligence in at number 2. Then we've got reskilling, upskilling, learning culture, change management, people and data, insights, measurement and ROI, and then future of work and performance management and coaching. So, I don't think, and you can tell me if I'm wrong, I don't think there are any surprises there in terms of what the focus is for heads of learning in large organizations currently.
Yeah, 468 of them, 468 respondents in the US, Europe, mainland Europe, and the UK largely. So it's a pretty diverse group. It's not all narrow subsection. It's a pretty wide cross section. And no, I don't think there are any big surprises, but I think that there seems to be a greater urgency. If that's one word I would use to describe this particular report, it's a sense of urgency that we need to get stuff done, and we've got to get it done fast because the pressures are mounting, the tensions are high, and the issues become ever more pressing in organizations, and therefore on the best of the talent and L&D and people, essentially. Is that fair, Martin?
Yeah, and I think, and within that, so you've got this whole, you've got the reality check that AI is not a side of the desk issue. It is really like front of mind. It's really driving the agenda. And I think that's hugely important for learning teams that, might not be engaging much at the moment. I think that, organizations are doing that. It's coming down the line. It's here for many. It's already changing everything, which leads on to the fact that another big rising area of priority for heads of learning is change management. So it kind of comes hand in glove, I think, with AI as the driving force for change. So I think that, so you've got change management, you've got AI, and then interestingly, I think this is really important, and it's been said, and you've said this for a long time, there's this shift away from programs. It's like the idea of a learning culture being this thing where learning is work, that familiar idea that we're doing it all the time. And actually that's where it's happening, and making it happen there is actually really, really more important than ever. And these heads of learning are saying that they're not looking at designing more programs. They are looking at how work is done, how learning is a part of work, and that's a cultural thing. So I think
it is.
Those trends.
The significant shift, Martin, is. Sorry to interrupt, talk over you. The significant uplift is that learning culture as a priority lifts from 40% in 2024 to nearly 50% in 2025. So that's quite almost a quarter uplift in 12 months. And there's a good quote I've got from an L&D global leader in finance and insurance who says, "How can learning culture and systems empower and support employees in their upskilling and career journey in the context of AI transformation?" Great quote, I think. So it's about empowering, enabling, assisting, not bunging another couple of courses down their throats.
Yeah, and I think there's something that we've been talking about for a long time. And I think a lot of research does bear this out. But I think it feels to me like it's actually becoming a reality if this is not already. And that's, as you say, that is a significant shift in all the time we've been looking at research and discussing how learning is manifested in an organization. It's definitely come a long way from it's all about the programs and the courses and the content. It's it really has shifted and continues to shift. I think it's quite interesting also that for all these priorities, I'm just looking at the some other stats in here, and like things like diversity and inclusion and engagement, employee engagement seem to be dropping off a bit. Which is kind of interesting and worrying. So I think that whilst the priorities are now AI and change, you've got to remember that means other things are not a priority or less of a priority, I think. And I think it's worth keeping an eye on that, because what's the kind of collateral damage, if you like, at the time when you're looking at driving leadership skills and AI and change, but you're less looking at diversity and inclusion in particular. I think that's worrying, because I think we can't take our eye off this idea of what it is to have an inclusive, engaged workplace. That doesn't go out the window.
There's a quote from Karen Coker, who's she used to be the CLO of Microsoft, but she's now Global General Manager, Future of Work. And she says the future of work isn't a distant concept. It's the defining challenge of today. And the headline of that section of the report is L&D's pivot to organizational design puts the focus on the future of work. Now, these are big shifts, and we just glibly trot them out. But there's a whole world behind those words. And it's basically saying there's a whole new agenda here, alive and well and beginning to flourish. And those organizations that get it first are going to be the ones who survive easiest in the current climate. So there's lots of good, meaty material in this report. And it's done in, I think there's about 18 chapters. So each couple of pages brings out a theme, and those themes are all tracked back through the views of the respondents. So I think it's a very interesting kind of wake-up call report. It's saying that big stuff is changing, and woe betide if you're not on top of all of that. Am I wrong?
Yeah, I think so. I think the takeaway for me is that really take a look at the picture this kind of research is painting. And it is quite different to what it would have been 5 or 10 years ago. And I think that's the point, that actually some things don't change very quickly in learning and development, but actually there have been some marked changes, and they are happening right now. And I think this type of research really does show how that is working. And the great thing is it does have lots of interviews with heads of learning. So I think it also puts some sort of flesh on the bones, actually, about, how it's working for them. So, yeah, I think you're not wrong. It's really valuable. And I think it is kind of showing, because interestingly, it's been running the same kind of questions for 4 years. And there are changes there. We are seeing it. And there isn't a lot of longitudinal research in L&D. So it's quite nice to have that view, because then you do understand that the picture is shifting.
Yes, I think that's absolutely right. It's true. So it is a look at top priorities, and it is a look at some of the really nitty-gritty issues, big issues. And all of that is reflected through these hundreds of people, and they're very senior people, and they are almost the kind of indicators for change. So that's another reason why you should read this report. You're getting at the top individuals in the top organizations around the world, and that's very, very insightful and useful. Yeah. So Martin, thank you so much for drawing attention to this report. There's a link on the screen. You can download it for free. It's absolutely available. And keep an eye open for iVentif. They're an interesting organization, and they run an awful lot of seminars, webinars all around the world. And it's free for participants. That you can, if you're senior, you can get in for nothing. They're not charging for that. So, Martin, excellent report. Thank you so much for your time.
Thanks, Nigel.
Well, that is the end of our first show in the new year, and I hope everybody enjoyed it. What struck you, Kate? What did you find here that you might not have found in 2025?
Well, Nigel, I think it's the look ahead for me. I mean, obviously, I had a great chat with Laurie. She's always got her finger on the pulse, and it really got me to thinking around, what is going to be the reality in 2026. I feel like we've had the hype; those hype cycles get shorter and shorter around AI, and this is the year that it really needs to kind of stand on its own 2 feet. Just recently there's been another lawsuit, a class action suit in America around the use of AI in one of the more recruiting-led solutions. Mark Benioff has come out after sort of, getting rid of people last year so that AI agents can do the work. Now he's backtracking on that. So I think this is the year of pragmatism, maybe is the word. We've all kind of adopted it. We're all using it more and more, but maybe we don't end up throwing the baby out with the bathwater, and those real use cases will start to emerge, and we can all learn from those.
Yeah, what I say, Kate, is that this is the year that AI will become invisible. So instead of being It's at the front. This is the most important thing. It will become a tool, and like all tools, it just goes into the background and it does its heavy lifting and it does amazing things, and people will be sharing all of that. But I don't think there's going to be any big jaw-dropping, wow, it's AI. I think we've gone past that now. It's a useful, incredibly powerful tool. But ultimately, it's one of many, many tools that are in our portfolio. And I think if you listen to Eglė, she's basically saying that this is the year of implementation. It is not the year of grabbing the edge of the table in toe-curling excitement. We're past all that. So we'll wait and see. We'll wait and see. But that will be my prediction. So, okay.
Yeah. I agree with that. And I would just throw out a shout. If anybody does want to come on and talk about, how they're using AI in their practice, or, some of the trends that they're seeing, or they're researching any of these things, our job is to share these stories with the audience, with the industry. So, get in touch if that is the case, because we're always looking for new people to interview and new stories as we put our schedule together for the year.
Completely agree. And talking of schedules for the year, any events to take a note of, Kate?
Oh, just one or two. We warm up after the holidays. So 3rd to the 4th of February is the World of Learning Summit in Olympia in London. 12th of February, I'm gutted, I'm not here for it, but the Learning Awards run by our friends at the Learning Performance Institute in London. On the 12th of Feb is the Change Management Conference being run by the CIPD. Sounds very useful, very important in this current climate. 25th of March is the LPI's Learning Live Networks in London. And 29th to 30th of April, good old Learning Technologies at the Excel in London. That'll be a big build up over the next few months to that.
I think so. And I'm really looking forward to that. Right. Thanks very much indeed. Thanks for that, Kate. And we're back on the 26th of February. I'll be there. You'll be there, Kate. And I hope everyone watching this show will also be there. Thank you.
See you then.